Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast with Michael Becker and Paul Peebles. During this program, you will hear interviews with real-life successful investors who will share their stories and provide useful advice on how to acquire, finance, and operate apartment complexes. Now, here they are, Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital. Joining me today would typically be the man himself, the governor of the great state of real estate in Texas, Mr. Michael Becker, but he's on another due diligence assignment here towards the first part of January of 2025. So in the podcast with me today, the best loan officer in Dallas-Fort Worth. Yes, it is Ricardo Hinojosa. Ricardo, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing great. Very great. We had a great bus tour last week. We had 30, 40 people that showed up for that. A little educational bus tour that, on the eyes and perspective of a lender, what's important when you go out to buy your first deal or your second deal. And what we see, we threw everybody on a bus and we showed them around, and we had some great conversations on the bus tour. So we'll probably be doing that again in March. So if you want to come to Texas, if you want to start investing in apartments, this is probably the best way to take your first big toe into the big bathwater of multifamily, just to kind of see if it's right for you. So again, go to oldcapitalpodcast.com, Old Capital Podcast, and look for the next Old Capital multifamily bus tour. So we'll talk to you then. So in the podcast today, we have friends of ours that we've known for a long period of time. They've been on the podcast before. It's been a while, and so we'll talk a little bit about the last podcast and what they've done from that period of time to today. And what I love about these people, and I don't put any words lightly when I say love, but I definitely love these folks because they're just good people, nice people, and I've known them for a long period of time. They come from great families, they have great kids, and they've been partners not only in life, but also in multifamily acquisition and multifamily management for a number of years. I mean, they actually got their hands into the business. They're just not one of those talking heads that talks a little bit about it, but they had somebody else run the show. These folks are actually talking to tenants, talking with managers on site of their properties. They're talking to the maintenance people. I mean, they're hands-on, and we'll talk a little bit about how they're so special at doing this. And I really want to focus on our conversation with Cory and Candice Muldrow. Cory, how are you?
Doing great, Paul. Thanks for having us.
No problem. Candice, how about you? How are you doing?
I am great. Happy to be here.
No problem. So Cory and Candice, they formed a company a number of years ago called M Group Capital. M Group Capital, they're a Dallas-Fort Worth-based multifamily ownership and management group. And they've done a wonderful job on some properties that they have acquired, rehabbed, and they've stabilized. And what I love a little bit about their story is they didn't come in for multifamily right from the beginning. They had careers. And you may have seen Candice, if you're from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, on television, because she was a host, a producer, an on-air reporter for one of the largest television stations here in Texas. And Cory went to the University of Texas at Austin and then got his doctorate from TC, Texas Christian University. And then he owns his own anesthesiology consulting practice. So they had careers before they had the opportunity to get into multifamily. So we're going to talk a little bit about their journey from where they started to where they're at today. We won't handle everything in this short podcast, but I just want to give you a sense, a little bit about their background and how they've done it. And if they can do it, obviously we think you could probably do it too. So I'm going to kick it over to Ricardo, and let's play 20 questions with Cory and Candice with M Group Capital.
Fantastic, guys. So like Paul said, it's been a little while since you were on the podcast. So let's just get let's start from the beginning. Why multifamily, and how did you get started?
Well, that's a very expansive question. I can go on and on and on and on. I mean, we joined and got into multifamily because we saw a financial future that could give us a lifestyle that we would never be able to have any other way. It allowed us to become entrepreneurs and invest in real estate, an asset that holds its value, withstands inflation, and gives you cash flow. So that was the reason why we jumped into multifamily and the ability to scale.
So For somebody that's sitting back and sees those benefits and is looking to get started, what were some of the first steps that kind of got you moving forward?
So we actually joined a mentorship group, education and mentorship group program. We both had backgrounds where we definitely wanted to invest in real estate. I'm a third generation real estate investor. My family invested in single family. So that's really how we got started. We started buying houses and renovated them, got them leased. Then we started looking into multifamily and we started learning more about, as Cory mentioned, the ability to scale. And we jumped right in. We started as limited partners, investing with other deal sponsors. And then once we did that a few times, we said, you know what, we can do this too. So we did. And we bought our first 18 unit property in Arlington, Texas.
And that was when? Back in
2017. I was actually thinking about that. We have known you guys for 10 years, almost, maybe over 10 years. So yeah, it's time flies when you're having fun.
It does. It seems like yesterday we were walking Diamond Villa. I remember.
Yeah, it's such a blessing to have trusted partners throughout this journey. And when you find them, you hold on to them. So yeah, you guys were with us on our first property and have been with us ever since.
So at that time, you guys still had your careers. So talk a little bit about that on managing the two and then getting started at first. What were some of the challenges and how did you overcome that struggle that most people go through?
So it definitely came with struggle and it took a lot of strategy and planning. But when we first started, even with 18 units, we started off with a management company. But what I did is I took on contract positions within my career so that I could make sure that I was there through any critical times, especially during renovations, inspections. And I basically dropped my hours to where sometimes I would only work evenings or sometimes I wouldn't work at all so that I could be there and be available to make sure that the asset performed. That was the strategy. Sometimes you have to make those sacrifices to be able to take that jump and take that lead to pursue your goals and dreams.
And it's great when you have a team because while Cory was able to work contract in his profession, I was working full time with benefits, medical benefits. So we didn't lose in that. So it's really a great benefit for us having each other as a team because we were able to have Cory reduce his hours. I'm still working full time and we were able to balance.
That's fantastic. I still remember back when you guys got started. And one of the things about these two is things just don't happen. These guys have had this planned. They had a strategy from day one. They had goals from day one. And it's just been fantastic to see you guys, one deal after another, just progressing and hitting those big milestones. So congratulations on all your success. And it's great to, like I said, great to have you back to tell this story. What point did you start realizing that, hey, you want to scale a little more? And was it the second deal, the third deal? At what point did you start kind of bringing things together with your own management company, with your own team? At what point did that happen?
So we learned quickly with 18 units that it is difficult to operate when you only have 18 units. Mm-hmm. You don't have any on-site staff. It's a little bit more difficult to find a management company that will manage 18 units. It's not impossible. They're definitely out there, but your options are a little less. So the goal was always to go bigger. So our next property was 100 units, 102 exactly in Arlington, and we still have that property now. And at that point, we were able to retire me from my corporate job because we had enough income coming in, and I started our management company.
At that point, so you had a little over 100 doors, and you made the switch. Why not just stay with third party? Like what did you guys feel that you could add that a third party management company could not?
I would say when you're looking at third party versus self-management, the advantages is no one's going to care about your baby like you will. It's just like your children. No one's going to care about your children the way you will. So we took that same approach with property management and taking care of our assets. You only rise or you actually fall to your lowest standard. And our standard is very high. Not to say that third-party management standard is not, but we have a standard that's higher, and it's extremely difficult to meet. And the only way to meet those standards is to take the hands-on approach.
Fantastic. So after that second deal came a much larger deal. So you went from, the 18 units to 100, 102, you said, and then talk about I think it was a third deal, 250 plus doors. Was that your third deal?
That was our third, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big one.
Yeah,
right. It's a big jump.
That's amazing to go from 18 units to 102 units up to 256 units. I mean, before we go to the property that's 256 doors, I just want to kind of walk backwards a little bit with, let's say, Diamond Villa. I mean, you guys, 18 units, you put the property in the hands of a third-party property manager. It was I would probably classify it as a C property and maybe a C minus property and maybe a C area, and maybe even a B minus area, and that you were able to revisit that property over a period of time by updating the units. I mean, you put hardy board on that property, redid the roofs, which doesn't really add value, but you did some interior updating to the property itself, and you repositioned the property to a market leading, I would imagine, B plus property, which meant that the tenants that were there historically that were used to having kind of a crappy property, they had to go away. And then you brought in new tenants with a new vision and able to make rents go higher during that period of time. They cut their teeth on a smaller property, improved up their formula that they were able to take an older asset. This asset was 1970, 65. It was an older asset.
Mm-hmm. Flat roof.
Flat roof property. And they shined it up like you wouldn't believe. So they took an old beaten down penny and they really made it a pristine dime or a quarter. So they did a nice job and let somebody else take it from there after they sold the asset and did really well. And they kind of did that same formula for Belmont Place, and that's the 102 unit property. And so you bought Diamond Villa in 2017. How long from Diamond Villa to the next acquisition? How long did it take you to get deal number 2 going?
We acquired Belmont Place in 2019. So we wanted to make sure that we fully understood operations, financials, how the business worked, and that's the approach that we took. And all of our properties, they have a very similar theme. We win you at hello. So all of our properties have very robust curb appeal because that's what makes people feel like they're at home is when they drive up and they see a nice, clean community, your paint is good, your grounds are clean. And that's what really wins your resident over. As soon as you drive in, that's where when your visitors come over, your residents, visitors come over, they're like, wow, this is a really nice place. And then you get them on the inside and then you just close the deal. So that's always been our strategy is to have the greatest curb appeal in the market.
You had to raise money to do the rehab on Belmont because that property was, I wouldn't say it was, I would probably say that it was a little tired. And you guys brought in like $1.2, $1.3 million that you raised in the equity raise into the transaction itself in CapEx. Where did you put all that money that you guys raised on the initial raise? Where did that money go into to be able to update that look of that property?
Sure. We put it into paint, deferred maintenance. We do a lot with cedar. And then we put the rest into the units to make our residents feel really good. A lot of landscaping, because landscaping is the number one thing that, sets your properties apart. And that's most commonly the place that's most neglected. So a can of paint and some flowers and mulch goes a very long way.
Yeah, these are people's houses. I mean, this is their house. So they want to be proud of their house. And you guys, I think, have done a great job to the point there. I think that property was nominated for Community of the Year by the Apartment Association in Tarrant County. And I could be wrong with that, but I don't know how you guys didn't win because you took a tired, sleepy property and made it into another shiny dime or quarter. And then we're able to get the property stabilized and got occupancy up between 98 and 100%, which was higher than probably the submarket itself. So you looked out the door and you saw other properties down the street. They weren't as nice as yours. And so you're stood out, just like what Cory was saying with that wood plank enclosures for the backyards. and they stained it, looked great, and able to charge more money with having nice backyards that you could put a dog back there. So you can get a little bit more pet rent on the deal. So I thought you guys did a great job. And so what I'm trying to get to is you just can't take over a deal and say, I'm a better operator than the last guy. You actually have to start putting money into these deals yourself with your investors to kind of show really what the vision is. And I will tell you that when we go to the next property, when they went from 102 to 256, in what year did you buy the Monet?
We bought that one in 2021.
So you're not buying a bunch of these properties every other month. You're very straightforward. You have a plan, you operate the plan, you work the plan, and then when it's coming together, then you decide, do I want to keep the property or maybe refinance it, pull some cash out, or I want to sell the deal. So they bought the Monet, and they had Ricardo and I out at that property back in 2021. And I forget the name of the property. What was the name of the property prior to you calling it the Monet?
It was called Broadmoor.
And Broadmoor, Monet painted some beautiful landscaping and everything came together. The Broadmoor, prior to having these guys renovate this property, was unbelievably bad. And I said to Cory and Candice, and with Ricardo listening in, are you crazy? What the hell's wrong with Cory and Candice? This is not something that I would ever take on. But I will tell you that I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't have the vision. Or Cory and Candice, they have the vision of what that property can be. I mean, not only do I not have the vision of multifamily, I don't even have the vision in single family. So when somebody says to me, hey, listen, do you want to buy this property? I only see the property as it is right now. I can't see what the vision of what it's going to be in the future. So when we walked on that property, I knew this property, that the seller on that property, and you guys can correct me, hadn't been on that property for 2 years. California seller, they were just picking up a check from their management company. They never knew what was going on. There was a blue tarp on the roof. It had suffered from all kinds of deferred maintenance. Toilets didn't work, kitchens that didn't work. There was safety hazards of decks, second floor decks and stairs. I mean, it was, excuse my language, it was a shit show. And I'm like, again, Cory, Candice, are you crazy? And they said, Paul, we have the vision. I said, I'm glad you have the vision because I don't have the vision. Taking it from the period of time that you guys acquired the property, tell me a little bit about what you guys did to, again, this beautiful painting of multifamily called Monet.
I kind of want to chime in. Ricardo, you were there when we first toured that property, and there was an armed guard at the front when you were driving in. And Ricardo was like, are you sure?
Oh, yeah. So I drove in, they stopped me, and what are you doing here? Why are you here? And
are you buying or selling? That's probably what they would
it was an experience, that first tour. But talk a little bit about how because Paul's right. I mean, it's hard to see past what's in front of you sometimes. And I think that's something that separates you guys, is that you can see value where others don't. So talk about that process, what you saw, what you took over, and what you did to kind of turn that deal around.
So we saw an area that was positioned for growth, and there was money being invested into the area. There was a dilapidated mall that they were pouring $200 million into to help uplift the area. And we were familiar with the area. We actually grew up in that area, but it had suffered from a lot of neglect. And we were excited to be a part of the area being revitalized. When we saw Monet, yes, we did see a property that was a hot mess, but we also saw the opportunity in the area, the opportunity to be a part of a great story for the area. And I look back at it and I'm like, man, we had a lot of guts going 100 units to 256 units of a very difficult property to reposition. But it was that property has been transformative in our journey of what we do now. We, as deal sponsors and even in our management company, we've just learned a ton from that property. And not only was it a mess on the outside, but the operations were a mess. I mean, I'm sure you can imagine If a property has been neglected for so long and no money being put into it, the operations were a complete mess. They were even more of a mess than the outside. So we got in there, we got our team together, and we started renovating. That was the first thing. And then we started cleaning up the inside.
Did you renovate units that were occupied, or did you guys go to the non-occupied units first? I mean, kind of walk through me exactly what you did in a couple sentences.
Sure. So when we acquired that deal, it was March and it was right before leasing season. So the number one thing when we take over a property, and ideally we're taking over right at leasing season and being able to take advantage of it. So we went in and started our exterior renovations within the first 30 days. And we were, when I say started, we were cooking. We had the roofers, the foundation team, the wood repairs, the sidewalk repairs, like we moved. And that was a part of our strategy in leasing up, because you have to get that curb appeal in order to attract the right kind of resident. At the same time, so we had heavy duty renovations going on, multiple trades all going at the same time. We also were having to clean house on the operations. So when we took over the property, it was 72% occupied. Everything was deferred and dilapidated. So of that 72%, occupancy was probably 50% economic. So at that point in time, what we had to do was clear up the bad debt and get the bad tenants out and get good residents in. At one point during our process, I would say probably month 2 to 3, we were renovating about 30 units a month with 8 different crews. Not only did we have the exterior renovations going on, we had the interior renovations with probably 3 different teams with 8 different crews to get all of these things done all at the same time. And we were able to take that property from 72% down to 50 and then back up to the 90s by the end of leasing season, which would have been in August.
It was wild.
It was a lot of moving.
You got back into the 90s in that leasing season?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my goodness. I was about to ask you how long did it take? That's an amazing turnaround. And was it the fact that you just kind of had to rip off the Band-Aid and start from scratch? I mean, that was part of it, but you guys, that's a lot to coordinate in several months.
That is a lot to coordinate. And we also had the issue of vagrants. We can't have that many units just sitting vacant.
Yeah.
So we had to cook. We had to get these units turned and get someone in them to be able to get the property where we want it to be. And we had our 90-day, we already went into the project knowing our goal is to be stabilized in 90 days. So we went after it.
What was the total CapEx investment into that deal?
We did about $3.5 million in reno total.
How much exterior, how much interior?
It was about 2 to 2.5 on the exterior, and the rest was interior. And essentially, the approach we took with it, and the reason why we wanted to go as fast as possible, is because when you're 50% occupied, just think of on a 256 unit, you're losing $100,000 or more per month. Yeah. So spend all that you can on marketing, get the call centers, get the people in the office, have 3 leasing, get that place leased up, because you're just losing money every month. And there are people looking for homes. You just need to find them and get them in there, get heads and beds that are paying.
So on a deal like this, I mean, there's a lot of upfront work, right? So the pro forma upfront is critical. Your CapEx budget is critical. How do you walk a deal like this and put together an estimate of what it needs? I imagine you had your team out there. So we're out there, your construction team's out there. How does that all come together?
You got to have experts. Yeah. Because you can't pretend like you know everything yourself, and you got to rely on your team. You got to have an experienced team. You can't go with the cheapest bid, because you're going to pay for it one way or another. So you want to have people who can move fast, know what they're doing, and they have a trusted track record. And that's how you choose your team. And anytime, and this is what we've learned, anytime that you go cheap or shortchange the due diligence process, you're going to pay for it one way or another.
Ricardo, how was that deal financed? What was the intricacies putting all that rehab dollars into the property? How did you guys finance it?
Yeah, so it was a bridge loan. And one of the things about doing a bridge loan with this much value add is the pro forma. And we spend a lot of time on this and we stress it a lot, but the deal is underwritten on go forward economics. So how's the deal going to look like? How much rehab and what is the P&L going to look like on a month by month basis over that first 2-year period? On a deal like this, where you're going to take it down to 60, 50% occupancy, that pro forma is so critical because we've got to get that capital stack correct, right? We've got to put the right amount of debt. We've got to raise enough capital so that these guys have what they need to not only put into the deal in terms of capex, but an interest reserve to make sure that we can carry the property for the first 6 months, maybe even a year, depending on the situation. So a ton of work is done up front to make sure that that pro forma is buttoned up, because if it's not, then you're not going to have a successful project the way these guys were able to do it. They did everything up front, and really, you've got to be buttoned up. That's kind of the process.
What you're talking about is absolutely correct. You got to have the numbers up front, and you have to have the vision of what it can be in the future. And when I originally had seen the guy with the gun that was walking the property at the beginning that was security on the property, and then you realize when Candice Muldrow comes on the property, she doesn't have to have a gun. She's like the velvet tongue. She can smile at you and she can laugh with you, and then she's going to throw your ass off that property. If you are going to be outside the boundaries, if you're going to have a car that's going to sit there on blocks, or it's a car that's never been used and sitting in the parking lot, we're getting that car towed and get it out of here. She was the enforcer of making sure that property was going to make that direction, because they raised money. Not only was it their money, but they also raised other people's money that were counting on seeing the difference between a tired, old, never been updated property to what it turned out to be. And it really was, as I've said this before, it was like the Wizard of Oz of looking at something that was in black and white. And after they were done, it was all in color. And really, that property stands out, and they did a wonderful job of revitalizing the neighborhood. And we buy properties for all different reasons, but when you have the opportunity to take a tired property and turn it around in the community and make it better with better tenants and a better looking property for people to call their home, there's something to be said about helping everyone go over the hurdle. I thought you guys did a great job on that. And I don't know, Ricardo, do we want to even talk about Paisley and all the how that one?
I mean, that was their next acquisition, another 200. Yeah, another 200, right? Paisley was 200 units. Talk about that deal. That was a little different. Talk about the vision, the value add, because that's really what I think about what sets you two apart is that you do your whole organization top to bottom. You don't just raise equity. You're not just an asset manager. You guys are boots on the ground, and you have been for quite some time through this kind of amazing track record. But Paisley was another value add deal. That was another 200 units in Arlington. Talk a little bit about that deal, how you acquired it, and what you guys did to kind of turn that one around.
Well, I'm going to jump in here. So Cory signed the LOI on the Paisley while we were in the hospital, right the day that I gave birth to our son. So not only have we grown in our business, but our family has grown during this time too. But yeah, Paisley was a deal that came across. Cory can talk more about it. It was a great deal that kind of fell in our lap.
Yeah, so Paisley was a pocket deal. It was a clean asset in Arlington, Texas.
What is pocket deal? What does that mean?
That means that one of the brokers had a short list and they called us on it and said, "Hey, can you make this work?" And I was running my numbers and everything looked good. And I was like, "Hey, man, let me just get back to you." And by getting back to you was, let's make sure mom is okay before we move forward on a transaction. But it was a beautiful asset, well taken care of. The owners took really good care of it, but there was just so much opportunity that was left on the table. The asset was a little tired. The colors were kind of old and faded. And, we come in and do our thing, which is revitalizing the community, refreshing the amenities, refreshing the curb appeal. And what we found is that our residents, they get the best service from our management team. we go the extra mile and we instill that into our team, and your team takes care of your asset. And some of the things that we've been able to do there is mind blowing because of the approach that we take and how hands-on we are. One of the most amazing things that I think that we've done at that property that was just really low-hanging fruit was there were 2 units being taken offline for a very awesome cause. It's called Mission Arlington, which is a community-based service program that provides resources to the residents. They do financial, spiritual, they just do so much. And when I saw the deal, I was like, man, I don't want to get rid of the program, but those units are not economic. How can we make this work? And we were able to find a maintenance shop that was oversized. It's the largest maintenance shop I've ever seen. So what we did was we got creative and we're like, hey, how can we solve this problem? Here we go. So we went in and we renovated the maintenance shop, cut down the size of it, and created a community center and got those 2 units that were non-economic back online. So they were generating revenue. And we repositioned them into a nice new facility on the property so that Mission Arlington could stay and continue to serve our residents. And we were able to get the value add from having 2 units back online. So those are the types of things that we love to do.
Paul had asked you about the pocket deal. So a broker called you on this deal, and you've had several deals like that. You guys are very well known in the community, well liked. People like doing business with you. Talk about that aspect of it, because we get I get a lot of calls around people. Hey, I'm not seeing the deals. I'm not getting those calls. Why are you guys getting those calls? Talk about that part of the business.
I'm going to talk about the first part and let Cory end with his comments, but it wasn't always like that. And I saw Cory when we had Diamond Villa. When we first started, him making all the calls to the brokers daily, creating those relationships. So it definitely was not always like that. It took a lot of work and grind and grit to get to that point that we are now. You want to speak more on that?
Sure. It's a relationship business, and I watch the pros in the business and I take notes. And what they do is they're everywhere. You see the pros everywhere. The guys that are doing deals, they're at the cocktail luncheons, they're at the charity games, they're at all of the events so that you can shake hands and rub elbows. And you just have to break out of your shell and make that part happen. And it's a relationship business. Like, you have to build those relationships and you have to execute. So once you establish a reputation for execution, it will come. So it was just a vision, and it's just a matter of eating the elephant one bite at a time.
And it happens over time. Again, people get into this business and they expect overnight success, but it's not. Like you said, we've known each other for over 10 years, and it was one deal at a time, one relationship at a time that's really pulled it together. What advice you would give to somebody that's looking to get in, that's maybe listening to this and getting to know you guys for the first time? What are some of the key things that you would share that say, hey, how do you go from single family to 10 years later owning hundreds of doors and operating your own organization? What are a couple things you would say there?
I would say, number one, you have to develop the network. So for us, how we were able to find the success that we've had so far is because we had a group of folks. We joined a mastermind group, a mentorship group, and that's what's really helped us get to where we have. We're not just, buying deals and just turning them, and we care about the deals and we care about our investors. So we're not just, flying through this, but to get to the point from single family to where we are today, it really was the network that we had. And then also making those relationships with the vendors. Your lender is your number one partner in your deal. Our relationship with Old Capital, our relationship with different contractors. And like Cory said, your reputation is everything. So doing what you say you're going to do, executing, that's just a super important part of building yourself in this industry.
Talk a little bit about where you guys are today. What are you looking for right now? Given this market, kind of where we're at, what makes a deal? What do you guys get excited about right now when you see a deal?
So I think in this market, you're looking for something that will get your investors excited and get them off the sidelines. The past couple of years haven't been the most friendly, but everything comes in cycles. If you have your ups, you have your downs, and in these cycles is where victory is made. And, you're not going to win everyone, but what you're going to do is you're going to learn. You're either going to win or you're going to learn. And I think everyone out here has taken some lessons from this last cycle. And the people who have learned those lessons are going to do incredible things on this next cycle. We are looking for opportunities. We're looking to take advantage of market mismatch. We're looking at the cap rates for the area. We're looking at the cash flow, and we're looking at value add opportunities, because there's always an opportunity, but the only way to know is to look at every deal. And once you see a variance, that's when it's time to jump in and take advantage.
But how many deals do you think you'll go through in a market like this? Again, it's tough to find deals right now. There's not a lot of inventory. There's just not a lot of transactions. What's your approach? What are you doing every day right now to find that next deal?
Hopping on the phone, and you've got to get on the phone. You've got to make those uncomfortable calls. You've got to take the tours. You've got to get the reps in, because if you don't, then you're going to miss an opportunity if you're not looking. It's not going to just fall into your lap. It's going to be, hey, I'm looking. Oh, here it is right here. Here's the opportunity, because you're going to find there's always an opportunity in a challenging situation. You just have to be able to look at things and see it. The number of deals that I've underwritten, it's lower than it has been in the past. I think it would take us at least 100 deals to underwrite to find a deal. So if there's not 100 deals and you're still running that ratio, it's just a time factor. You still have to get those 100 deals in, and it still takes 100 deals, at least for me, to find exactly what we're looking for.
Are you underwriting the deals now, even at this point, or do you have a team that does it? Talk about that process.
I have people that help me look at deals, but I underwrite every one of them. So if there's anything out there that's got some opportunity, I'm diving in and making it happen. But yeah, you've got to figure out a way to multiply yourself in order to take advantage of opportunities.
I think people that have known the Muldrows know their upfront feelings about making a better community. It was probably difficult first when you had to collect on the small little property the first time, but over a period of time, investors want to invest with folks that do what they say and they get these properties complete. So they've done a wonderful job with that. And so we wish you continued success in your journey to be the best that you can be in the multifamily space. If people wanted to reach out to you and get a little bit more information about what you guys do, what's the best way for people to track you down?
You can go to our website, M as in Mary, groupcapital.com, or you can reach out to us directly at Candice at mgroupcapital.com or Cory at mgroupcapital.com.
So Cory and Candice, thanks for spending some time with us. Certainly do appreciate that. Ricardo, any final words, any comments?
No, this was great. We appreciate you guys joining us again. It's always a pleasure, and looking forward to an exciting year. I know you guys are looking for deals, so we'll keep an eye out, and I'm sure we'll have you back on the podcast soon to talk about that next one. So we appreciate the time.
Sounds good.
Thanks, guys.
Right. Thanks, guys. Again, I'm Paul Peebles, Ricardo Hinojosa, Cory and Candice Muldrow. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please join us at oldcapitalpodcast.com to sign up for our weekly email updates. We'll see you next week for another great interview.